Hi.
Hello there. We're in Adol Safar, Objections to a Miracle Have No Basis in Reason, page 272 of the Divine Unity of Scripture. He's dealing with the era of miracles, the first great era of miracles, Moses and Joshua's generation. And now he gets to a really weird story, a story that's, as Safar says here, mocked, but is even questionable theologically to most Christians who have trouble wrapping their minds around this sequence. Here comes an episode, Safar says, frequently used by the opponents of Revelation who see only the surface and who are very easily satisfied with the most feeble satire upon what appears to them to be grotesque. When the Israelites first come into contact with their enemies, the Amorites and the Moabites, just before they are going to take possession of the land promised to their fathers, there's a wonderful witness raised up for Jehovah, not from among the Israelites, but from among the heathen nations, Balaam, who was a seer and knew that Jehovah was God. Whether he had retained some of the primeval knowledge handed down among the heathen, or whether the report of the mighty acts of God in Egypt and the wilderness had reached him, as it had reached many others, he was a seer, one who used divination, a soothsayer, many of whom were to be found among the heathen. These were, as Scripture teaches us, not merely deceivers, but they possessed a real knowledge and a real power in connection with demons. Balaam wished to combine his heathen magic with the knowledge of Jehovah. Deeply rooted in his heart was the love of money, covetousness, which is idolatry.
He was a double-hearted and a double-minded man, yet full of light and knowledge, a great psychological miracle, and several times held up for our instruction and warning in the books of the New Testament. When God permits him to go up to Balak, but on the condition that he should speak only what God commanded him, God, seeing the perversity of his heart, wished to rebuke him and to hinder him. And then there came the angel with the drawn sword. But he that was a seer became blind and saw not, and he that was a prophet above the level of humanity sank below the level of humanity, so that, as the Apostle Peter teaches us, the dumb animal rebukes his madness. God rebukes his perversity by making this irrational animal speak to him. The ass saw the angel of the Lord and was frightened. The ass also perceived the injustice of his master and resented it. And in both these acts, the animal did not transcend the limits of what we see all animals around us continually do. That the ass expressed both its fright and its indignation at being wrongfully treated is according to natural phenomena. The miracle begins here, that with the human voice he rebuked the perversity of Balaam. And that all this happened not in an ecstasy or a dream is evident from this fact, that not until after this rebuke did Balaam behold the angel of the Lord. But this miracle, striking as it is only one of the incidental and accidental features of this wonderful narrative.
The importance of Balaam and his predictions lies in quite a different territory. Balaam himself, in wonderful words, shows to us the great distinction that there is between prophecy and the enchantment and divination common among the heathen nations, as the consulting of the flight of birds, or the foreshowing and foretelling of future events from the configuration of the intestines of sacrifices, and so on. In Israel, it was the living God who, by his word, was to direct their history. Many of the sayings of Balaam have become household words among the faithful. His declaration that God was not man, that he should lie, or the Son of Man, that he should not be faithful to his promise, or his prediction of the king that was to arise in Israel and give to it the victory, the star that was to come out of Jacob, and the scepter that was to come out of Judah. Wonderful were the predictions of Balaam, and this was their significance, that here God raised up a witness out of heathenism to show to Israel that, weak and powerless as they were in themselves, and about to enter upon a task which appeared, and must appear to man, impossible, that of conquering the nations, they were strong in the Lord. Here is a heathen seer who beholds heathen power after heathen power rise up, while all of them are destroyed and disappear, and Israel alone remains. There's no prophecy until we come to the prophecy of Daniel, which passes forth to the utmost distance like the prophecy of Balaam. For as a heathen he was more concerned with the relation of Israel to the world than with Israel to itself. So in this prophecy of Balaam we find what is afterwards more fully revealed by Daniel, that from the west, the Isles of Kittim in the Mediterranean Sea, that is Greece, or Crete, or some island in the distant west, there should come the victory of Israel over Ashur, that is the invader, the great power of the world in those days, that was to rise up against her. As Balaam says, Israel is a nation apart, separated by God for a great purpose. Well, that's a great point, that the mocker, or the unbeliever anyway, sees the great miracle as being an ass talking. But if you're coming at it from the standpoint of belief, you realize the greater miracle here, the one that causes you to wonder and scratch your head, is why is God using someone outside God's organization?
Yeah.
So from the standpoint of someone in a cult, where we come from, this is not acceptable. So the first thing we have to do is break the box that we put God in. If we don't allow that God can work outside the box we construct, we're in trouble.
We're not controlling him.
So you have over and over, one of them being, of course, the connection with Daniel, where Nebuchadnezzar, Jeremiah had said, Nebuchadnezzar is my servant, Yahweh has said.
Yeah.
Unacceptable to God's ancient organization, who said, no, he can't use a pagan.
And when Joseph is talking to Pharaoh, he says, God has revealed this to you.
A pagan?
Yeah.
An idolater? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Balaam's an idolater. So you've got other examples. You've got Job, who we don't normally think of as not being an Israelite. He's outside the organization. And then you've got...
And yet he's a godly man.
And Cyrus, who is not just called God's servant. He is called the anointed of Yahweh, the Messiah. One of the first time the word Messiah is used in the Bible is of a pagan. And then there's Jethro, right? Remember Jethro?
Yeah, that's Moses' dad, Moses' father-in-law.
Yeah. In Exodus 18, Jethro is the one that God uses to bring the light to Moses as to how he should order the government of Israel in this first generation of their leaving from Egypt. So God can use pagan sources, and he does it over and over again. We don't approve of it. But I think the theme, therefore, is why does Yahweh keep using people outside what you consider to be his organization? And, of course, this is very important to the decision you have to make when not just leaving God's so-called organization, but in reevaluating your relationship to those outside. Do you allow that the people outside your box that you inherit from the Watchtower, that God can use people outside and is using them? So we'll put in a link to Watchtower Myths, which is a video we did about this very myth of God's organization in the Old Testament. And this is part 5 of that series, based on Exodus 18. New light from a pagan source.
Yeah.
God using Jethro to illuminate the way Israel is to be governed. See you soon.
Yeah.